Hello, 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 and welcome back to yet another NFL video. Today we're starting, I'm not gonna call it a series. It's just every time I make a video, I do pairs and three of a kind or whatever it's called. So, today's video is gonna be taking a look at NFL teams who I expect to take the biggest jump from last season to next season. The teams who improve the most this offseason, if you will. So, with that out the way, thank you for watching. Let's get right into it. Short intro today. I'm excited here. Starting off with the Tennessee Titans. You know, the Titans last year were a team who really purged everything that we've come to know with the Titans. I mean, in one offseason, they got rid of Derrick Henry, really the face of the franchise, at least for me. I don't know what you guys thought about when you thought of the Titans. I thought of Derrick Henry. Mike Vrabel, the longtime head coach who had won multiple playoff games, a lot of success there. And Ryan Tannehill, who, obviously not the best quarterback in the league, but he's been there for several years now. So you got rid of him as well. So a lot of change going on last season and this offseason for the Titans. But honestly, I think they came out of it brand new, obviously, but with a lot of potential going into next season. I expect them to increase their win total by at least two. I think three is possible. I'm not sure if I could see them winning 10 games because the AFC South is so talented, but I do expect the Titans to be much better than they were last season. Let's take a look right here at some of the moves they made this offseason. The biggest thing here I noticed was improving this offense, making their offense more explosive, and giving the young quarterback, Will Levis, more to work with, really. So, first off, let's take a look at Calvin Ridley. Now, I'm not going to criticize the contract. They paid Calvin Ridley a boatload of money. And if you look at the advanced stats, you could say Calvin Ridley really wasn't that good last season, but hey, the man had 1,000 yards, the man had 8 touchdowns, and without a doubt, he is better than anything they had last season, with the exception of DeAndre Hopkins. So honestly, even though Calvin Ridley isn't the most perfect player, he played all 17 games, which I loved. Got over 1,000 yards, which he probably should have had way more, but still a massive upgrade over what they had last season. Their wide receiver two last season was like Traylon Burks or something. Then they got Tyler Boyd recently in free agency. I love this pickup. Put Tyler Boyd in the slot, one of the best slot receivers in the NFL. He's been incredibly productive as a wide receiver three with the Bengals. On top of that, he pairs back up with the Titans' new head coach, Brian Callahan. He comes from Cincinnati, where he was the offensive coordinator for several years, a big part of the development of Joe Burrow and company, and developing these wide receivers and stuff like that. Tyler Boyd joins back up with him. I love that matchup, or that pairing, I should say. And I also love the hire of Brian Callahan in terms of trying to develop Will Levis into not the next Joe Burrow, but a very talented pocket passer, which is what his ceiling is. So I like everything they're doing right now. Tony Pollard, obviously, there is no Derrick Henry replacement. We're probably going to see a system where Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears get a lot of touches simultaneously. And look, Tony Pollard, obviously, no Derrick Henry, but the man's had back-to-back seasons of over 1,300 total yards. He was a Pro Bowler 2 seasons ago. So, people are really sleeping on this pickup of Tony Pollard. I don't expect him to do as much as he did in Dallas, but still, man, I expect this guy. And don't forget, he went to Memphis. Now he's playing in Nashville. That Tennessee connection, still intact. So I like the Tony Pollard pickup a lot. And then let's talk about the desperate need to improve this offensive line. It's been horrible for so long, and they get two massive upgrades here. One through the draft. That's J.C. Latham. He comes in from Alabama. Didn't play any left tackle last season. They're going to ask him to do that as a rookie. He may struggle right away, but I do expect him long term to be their answer at tackle. And then you get Lloyd Cushenberry. He comes in from Denver, a massive, massive upgrade at center. They dumped a lot of money on him, and deservingly so. They had to improve the offensive line, and he was one of the better free agents available. So I love that signing. Now let's take a look at what they did with some of their defensive signings. They lost a few guys to free agency. Sean Murphy Bunting, Aziz Al-Shaair, Danico Autry. They spent the 38th overall pick to get Devontae Sweat in. He comes in from Texas, and they finally give Jeffrey Simmons, sorry, a partner in the defensive tackle, the interior of that defensive line. Devontae Sweat, known for his amazing ability to stuff the run. He is a massive human being. And I think paired up next to Jeffrey Simmons, it will make his job that much easier as a rookie. Great at deflecting passes, getting in there, you know, just messing things up on the interior. Kenneth Murray comes in to replace Aziz Al Shair. I thought Kenneth Murray was very underrated with the Chargers. He's a lot cheaper. Um, I expect him to be a solid replacement. I don't know how good he's going to look, but I think he's a very slept on pickup, and I do expect him to look good in Tennessee. L'Jarius Sneed is their massive acquisition coming in from the Chiefs, arguably the best corner in football last season. When you take into account the postseason, that play he made against the Ravens to basically win the Chiefs the AFC Championship game, he was absolutely amazing last season. Coming off a career year, the Titans got him from the Chiefs. They paid him like he deserved to be paid. And now the Titans have a premier number one cornerback. I absolutely love that move by them. They also got in Chidobe Awuzie from Cincinnati as well. Multiple guys coming in from the Bengals. He did not have a great year last season, but in 2022 he was 2023 he was amazing. So he was injured last season, so small sample size. He didn't look great. They're obviously hoping he improves and does better than he did last season, but still, I would assume it is a good pickup there. Let's take a look now at their roster overall. That's a lie. Let's take a look at their team stats. How good were they last year? What did they struggle with? Offensively, they were bad. They were bad across the board. Didn't really excel at anything. They were a middle of the pack run team. Obviously, with Derrick Henry, you're going to be pretty solid there. They didn't turn it over as much, which is kind of surprising because you had multiple quarterbacks. One was a rookie, the other was Ryan Tannehill. But let's talk about where they really struggled at. 64 sacks allowed. I already mentioned this was a bad O line. Neither Ryan Tannehill or Will Levis had much time to throw the ball whatsoever. They didn't put points on the board, less than 18 per game, struggled to pass. And that's a mix of bad O line, not good quarterback play, and no receivers, and total yards under 300. So the offense was bad across the board. The defense, with that being considered, I'd say it's pretty good considering how bad their offense was. They didn't get any takeaways, which automatically, you know, a bad defense that gets a lot of takeaways is going to be better objectively than a middle of the pack defense that gets no takeaways, is what the Titans were. Basic and middle of the pack, literally in everything. Solid amount of sacks. Did not really struggle against the pass or the run. 18th in total yards allowed per game. Yeah, it was a solid defense, a very solid unit. I attribute that in most part though to Mike Vrabel. With him gone, who knows what they're going to look like next season. Now let's take a look overall at this roster here. Obviously, the biggest question mark I still have with this team is Will Levis. Um, I thought he looked solid for a rookie. Obviously, the connection with DeAndre Hopkins was the biggest bright spot there, if you want to put it like that. But outside of that, he didn't really have many good moments. But that's understandable, man. He had nothing to work with last season. I mean, he was throwing to Traylon Burks and Nick Westbrook, Akine, and Kyle Phillips. They had no receivers of to speak of besides DeAndre Hopkins. The offensive line was terrible. I'm still not confident at all at that right side between Daniel Brunskill and Nicholas Petit Freer, but they made a lot of improvements, and the Titans spent a lot of money this offseason to try and give Will Levis some more options. And I think that's what that's what they did. You have a good running back tandem, a much improved wide receiver core, improved offensive line, and with Brian Callahan at the helm now at the head coach position, I expect Will Levis to take a big jump from year one to year two. So keep an eye on that. I'm excited to see that. And defensively, I like their front seven, man. Harold Landry and Jeffrey Simmons, they're proven star players. We know what they bring to the table. The additions of guys like Kenneth Murray, like Tavondre Sweat, I am excited to see how they perform. But this secondary, man, notably the cornerbacks, L'Jarius Sneed, Roger McCreary, Chidobe Awuzie, Caleb Farley, those are four guys who I feel pretty confident in starting for anybody, really. So to have all four of those guys, three of which being extremely young, well, two of which, Roger McCreary and Caleb Farley, I really like this unit. You obviously got L'Jarius Sneed in there to be really the star of this entire defense, but between Sneed Jeffrey Simmons, and Harold Landry. Those are three solidified Pro Bowl players on this defense now at all three levels. So I'm very excited to see how this unit plays and if they can even be better than they were last season, which I thought was pretty solid. So that's going to be it for the Titans. Let me make sure. Oh no, never mind. One less. I should have gone over this more. So the key takeaways here. Will Levis, how much better does he get from year one to year two? Obviously, I expect him to take a big jump forward, but he is still a young player. We have to. I'm sure that there will be some growing pains next season. The wide receiver core. I didn't even mention Chico Conquo, one of the most explosive young tight ends in the NFL. He really does make this a complete wide receiver core. Weapons galore for Will Levis. No excuses there. A great running back duo of Tajee Spears, who really broke out last season as a rookie. He didn't really break out. He had a really underrated slept on rookie season. And obviously, the addition of Tony Pollard, offensive line should be much improved, especially on that left side. Jeffrey Simmons, Tavondre Sweat wreaking havoc up the middle. Harold Landry and Arden Key coming off the edge. Arden Key was a good player for them last season. And like I said, a very good cornerback room with L'Jarius Sneed as your new solidified lockdown corner. So Titans really a team that improved in a lot of places. They did lose some key players defensively. Obviously, really a whole change in the identity of this franchise, but I think they made the steps in the right direction. I think they set up their young quarterback for success, and now we just have to wait and see how it all comes together. Next up, we got the Chicago Bears. Now, I only have the win total set for 2 games improvement from last season to the next. I'm actually shocked that they won 7 games last season. Last season, so many highs and lows, man. It started off terribly last season. The offense was a joke. The defense was not getting any stops. Justin Fields looked lost out there. What's his name? Luke Getsy, the offensive coordinator, had a case as one of the worst in the entire league. The Bears started off horribly. Then Justin Fields got hurt, and they had Tyson Bagent playing for them. It was absolutely awful. It looked like all hope was lost in the middle of the season. Then Justin Fields came back from injury with a kind of a new fire lit under him, and he played some of the best football of his career post injury, the latter half of last season. I thought he played really well. I thought he played well enough to secure that job moving forward, but the Bears decided to move on from him, go in another direction. Obviously, we know they got Caleb Williams, and they decided now that Justin Fields is gone to go all out and improve the roster. Life's a bitch, but now that Justin Fields is gone, they improved the roster. Caleb Williams is going to be stepping into an amazing situation as a rookie. And let's talk about some of the improvements they've made. Ninth overall in the draft, they selected Romo Dunze, the stud receiver out of Washington. Ridiculous size, uncontested catchability, speed, deep ball threat. He does it all for you. You can line him up really anywhere. You get the ball in his hands. He's an explosive play waiting to happen. DeAndre Swift, the running back, they improve in that position from last season. He comes over from Philadelphia, where he had a really underrated season. Didn't get the ball as much as some of these other premier running backs. Still produced extremely well, and I expect him to do. Talking too fast. I expect him to do at least that well next season with the Bears. Keenan Allen coming off almost a career year before he got hurt. He was leading the league in receiving yards for a good while with the Chargers. He was amazing last season, a very underrated and what's the word? I don't know. A very good pickup by the Bears to acquire him from LA. Obviously, we know Caleb Williams. He's coming in as the number one overall pick, blue chip, generational prospect, whatever you want to call it. We know what he can do, and they expect him to be an immediate upgrade, at least as a passer, over Justin Fields. Kevin Byers comes in, or Byard, I should say, comes in to replace Eddie Jackson in the back end. Didn't have his greatest season last year. Kind of took a step back when he played for the Eagles, but if he can get back to what he was with the Titans, obviously we know what he can be. And then Montez Sweat, even though he was there last season, they acquired him midseason from the Commanders. He really had a career year last year. Broke into a dominant role as a pass rusher, 12 and a half sacks, 25 QB hits, 14 tackles for a loss. He stepped up in a big way, and he is their face of their front seven defensively, I'd say. Taking a look at their team stats overall, it's kind of shocking how they did some things extremely well and some things just horribly bad. Obviously, 2 years in a row, they've been an amazing running team, obviously, with Justin Fields at the helm of that. But, on the flip side of that, they couldn't throw the ball very well whatsoever. Offensive line, we know the offensive line sucks in Chicago. Justin Fields was running for his life every play, it felt like. Um, but some of that people say was his own fault, getting into unnecessary sacks, turned it over too much. Middle of the pack in terms of scoring, middle of the pack in terms of yards per game. Defensively, really strange. The best run defense in the league last season. That is shocking to me. I would not have guessed that in a million years. But they didn't get any pressure. Besides Montez Sweat, they had nobody who could get after the quarterback, and it was very prevalent. But they also took the ball away at an extremely high rate. So I did not expect them to be top five in takeaways and rushing yards allowed, but also they were horrible. What goes hand in hand with sacks per game. They were horrible at stopping the pass, so that makes sense right there. Overall, a strangely good defense, but a lackluster offense led them to 7-10, which is still kind of impressive to me. Um, Looking at their roster here, the first thing I noticed is that receiver core. I'm not sure if it's the best in the league, but it's pretty damn close. We know what DJ Moore and Keenan Allen were. DJ Moore, by the way, coming off a career year himself. So we got two guys coming off really some of their best seasons of their entire career. Add on top of that, Romo Dunze out of the draft, who could be one of, if not the best rookie receivers in the NFL. It's an amazing wide receiver core, not to mention the tight ends, Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett. The offensive line, on paper it wasn't good, but with young guys like Darnell Wright, you expect him to take a step forward. You upgrade at the center position with Ryan Bates from the Bills. So I do expect this offensive line to be better than it was last season. And it wasn't the worst in the league last season. So I do expect it to be a middle of the pack offensive line, if you want to call it that. I really like this group of running backs. DeAndre Swift, obviously, being the new number one, but you still got guys like Khalil Herbert and Roshan Johnson who do different things, but I think are both valuable and could be very reliable in the crunch time. Defensively, didn't really make any big time acquisitions here. The only guy I talked about, Kevin Byard, they got a lot of young guys who I think we could see take steps forward, notably Javon Dexter, Kyler Gordon, Tyreek Stevenson, Jaquan Brisker, a lot of guys in the secondary, but you also got your star cornerback returning in Jalen Johnson. I like this linebacker duo of TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, but as I said earlier, this defensive line, this front seven, they got to find a way to generate more pressure. Outside of Montez Sweat, they really didn't have anything going last season. So they got to work on that. Need big seasons from guys like DeMarcus Walker, for example. Um, but yeah, overall, I like this unit. I think defensively, if they can just recreate some things that they already were great at last season, you expect that to be a good unit. And then offensively, they could be a really explosive offense depending on how good Caleb looks as a rookie. So notable things here. New offensive coordinator should be more pass friendly. I haven't talked about this yet. There are no offensive coordinators. Shane Waldron, as a Seahawks fan, I am very familiar with our former offensive coordinator. I'll be honest, not the best in the world. As a Seahawks fan, maybe I'm a little overly critical. Listen, I'm sure compared to Luke Getsy, he will be much better. So listen, if you go from the 31st best offensive coordinator to the 21st best, it's gonna feel like a world of different. I do expect them to throw the ball deep a lot next season. That's what Shane Waldron did a lot, and I like that as a Seahawks fan. So with the Bears, that should be a goal. With Romo Dunze, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, you should be wanting to air it out a lot, especially with Caleb Williams back there. So look a lot for that. I already mentioned the receivers, second to none, in my opinion, in terms of that unit. Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, and Shane Waldron also have some history in Seattle. Um, Offensive line should be better. Running back room as a whole, I like it. DeAndre Swift as the number one, no problems with that. Montez Sweat, could he even take a step forward? He kind of, was just one of many in terms of a good players on the Commanders' defensive line. But now that he's kind of his own guy, could he even take a step forward into that upper echelon of dominant edge rushers? That could be a talking point next season. Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards, very good duo. Get all over the field, great in pass coverage, and Jalen Johnson, the leader of a very young secondary who could be rapidly improved. I mean, Jaquan Brisker, Tyreek Stevenson, Kyler Gordon. We could be talking about multiple guys who could end up being studs in the future. So a lot to look forward to if you're a Bears fan next season. Finally, for this video, we got the Cardinals. Honestly, I think the Cardinals could be the only team in the league next season to double their win total from the year before, from 4 wins to 8 wins. Obviously, The Cardinals were just a mess last season because Kyler was hurt for the first half. Everybody knew. I mean, some people are thinking the Cardinals are going to go winless. That's how bleak it looked early on. I don't even remember. They have Colt McCoy starting. They have who's the rookie? Clayton Thune. They had some scrubs out there playing quarterback. The rest of the team was garbage. Their cornerback room at one point was the worst in the NFL. They were awful. Not a lot of talent at receiver, not a lot of talent on the offense, it was just bad. They had one of the least talented rosters in the league last season, and it showed. They were bad. But with that being said, they weathered the storm. They kind of did as good as they could have. I think they did very well in the draft, the offseason. They made some sneaky good pickups. So let's talk about where they improved the most at. Obviously, the number one story being they spent the fourth overall pick on possibly the best player in the entire draft, Marvin Harrison Jr. A lot of talk has been how good could he be as a rookie? Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked, depending on how good of a connection he forms with Kyler. I wouldn't be shocked if Marvin Harrison Jr. is a Pro Bowler as a rookie, racking in over 1,200, 1,300 yards, close to 100 catches. He's just so talented, man. He I mean, I probably I had 5 minutes in all my mock draft videos just glazing Marvin Harrison Jr. Everybody knows what he does already, but to see it at the NFL level, I don't expect him to struggle whatsoever. I think he's going to pick it up like it's nothing. So he's instantly your wide receiver one. I think he's going to be a stud out the gate. Trey Benson, a really underrated pickup at the running back position. I thought they needed to get a running back. Trey Benson, arguably the best in the entire draft. He did not have 15 touchdowns. That's incorrect. I think he had like 8 or something. But great explosive back at Florida State. Wish he would have got more touches there. Under 200 is kind of crazy. Very explosive, short, powerful. You know, gets going quickly out the gate. Starting the receiving game as well. I think he's going to complement James Conner pretty well. Good change of pace back there. Jonah Williams, they signed him from the Bengals. Not the best tackle in the league, but to go from left tackle as he was playing in Cincinnati to right tackle might be easier for him. And he's healthy. He's available. He's an upgrade over what they had, and he should be able to be out there consistently, and hopefully would be better at right tackle than he was at left tackle for the Cardinals. I like that pickup a lot. And then obviously the biggest question mark here is can Kyler return to what he was a couple years ago? Last 2 seasons been hurt, obviously, not a full sample size, but he needs to take a massive jump to get back to what he was. And I don't even think he was ever a top 5 or 6 quarterback in the league. I think that's kind of off the table in terms of Kyler Murray. But can he get back to just being a Pro Bowl level guy? That'll be interesting to see, I think, for the Cardinals. Defensively, though, they made a lot of interesting moves. Sean Murphy, but like I said earlier, guys, this cornerback room was terrible. It was awful. It was the worst in the NFL. So they had to improve it. Sean Murphy Bunting comes in from the Titans. He had a really solid, kind of slept on season. Nobody talked about him, but a very good passer rating allowed, or solid passer rating allowed. Eight PBUs, 2 interceptions. He's an instant upgrade, instant starter, instant upgrade over what they had. They get Justin Jones in from the Bears. He had 4.5 sacks, 17 QB hits, one of the better pass rushers for the Bears last season, especially as an interior defensive lineman. Drafted Darius Robinson out of Missouri. He was very, very good in the SEC, 8.5 sacks, 14 tackles for a loss. Cardinals struggled to get any sort of pressure last season. He should be an instant starter and a day one upgrade over what they had. Then they got Garrett Williams. They drafted him in 2023. He was a third round pick, but he was hurt last season, did not play a lot. But in the limited, very limited action he was on the field defensively, I thought he looked pretty good. So I think this could actually be one of their breakout players for next season. I expect him to take a big jump from year one to year two. And they also spent the 43rd overall pick on Max Melton. They kind of got screwed here, I think, because like the 2 picks before this was a Kool-Aid and Cooper DeJean. So they were kind of left with Max Melton. Nothing wrong with Max Melton, but obviously not the same caliber as the other 2 guys. But obviously day one starter, instant upgrade over what they had. So between Sean Murphy Bunting, Garrett Williams, and Max Melton, all 3 of these guys I think are going to start over what they had last season and be massive improvements as well. Taking a look at statistically, it's bad. It's bad in a lot of areas. Pretty good running team, obviously with Kyler Murray. James Conner had a good year. That's kind of the only thing they could do well offensively. They didn't turn it over much either, and they were still middle of the pack in some categories. Didn't throw it well. Didn't put many points up on the board, but middle of the pack offensive line, total yards per game, whatever. Defensively though, and for a defensive minded head coach and Jonathan Gannon, I understand the roster was awful, but man, it's kind of a shocker to me how bad they were. I mean, they were bottom 5 in what takeaways, sacks, points allowed and rushing yards. They were the worst team in the league in terms of rushing yards allowed. Look, the personnel was awful, but this is kind of unacceptable to be honest. They were horrible defensively. That's why so much was invested into the defensive line and in the secondary. Taking a look at the new look roster here, honestly, this offense, I'm excited for it. You got guys coming back like Trey McBride was a very slept on tight end last season. He had a breakout year, and I think Kyler Murray really found a good rhythm with him. Michael Wilson was a very slept on rookie. I expect him to take another step forward. You got guys like Greg Dortch, Zay Jones, just as good options in that wide receiver room. Paris Johnson, you expect him to take a jump from year one to year two. And then defensively, we got one, two, three new starters on the defensive line. Uh, you got BJ Ojolari, who I expected to get better from year one to year two. And this secondary, at least on paper, it's solid. And you compare that to what they had last season, man, it looks like they just won the lottery with these secondary guys. So, it's improvement. It's massive improvement across the board compared to last season. So here's a couple of my takeaways here. Healthy Kyler, how good will he be? Is he fully healthy? Is he committed? Are we going to see his best season yet? Possibly. Is there another level to Kyler Murray that we have yet to see? That's yet to be decided. The wide receiver core: Michael Wilson, Marvin Harrison, Trey McBride. Kyler has some weapons. He certainly has a couple weapons there. The running back duo: Trey Benson, James Conner. They ran the ball well last season. I expect that to be the same next year. The new bookend offensive tackles, Jonah Williams and Paris Johnson, that certainly is going to help with the protection for Kyler Murray. And the front seven now, Justin Jones, Darius Robinson, Bijo Jalari, they got some guys, some difference makers that they really didn't have last year. Hopefully, they can start getting some type of pressure. And I already mentioned at length, at nauseum, the new cornerbacks that they have available. I do expect the Cardinals to take the biggest jump in terms of wins. I think 4 wins, maybe even 5, but probably 4 wins is very realistic. I would not be shocked at all if the Cardinals increase their win total the most of any team. Shorter video today. I don't want to make all my videos fucking close to an hour long. But if you stuck around to this point, thank you for watching. Subscribe if you're new, and I will see you again very shortly. Peace.